thank you to everyone who is taking the time out of their day to join us. And then I want to say thank you to everyone who contributed to this program, especially our collection staff here at KHS. They put a lot of work behind the scenes to make stuff like this really accessible. So I want to say thank you to Cherish and Julie for all the work they do. So this program is going to be shared on all of our platforms. It's on Facebook, it's on Zoom. If you have to leave early, it's going to be recorded and up on our YouTube page. Okay, here we go. Okay, so it's going to be recorded and up on our YouTube page. You can check it out afterwards if you have to leave early. Oh, welcome, Stuart. All right. So I'm going to start with a brief introduction to the research station in our archives here at Kona Historical Society. And then our guest speaker, Kahakaʻio, is going to give his presentation. We will have time for a Q&A at the end, but don't hesitate if you have a question at any point in the program, just go ahead and post it and we will make sure to get to it at the end of the program, probably around 1:30, 1:40, we'll start with our Q&A session. So this series is called From the Collections because it comes directly from our collections. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we were inspired to increase access to the many stories that exist within our archives. And so we started this series as a way to just sort of give a platform to some stories that don't often come out. So we've been able to cover a wide range of topics. This year, the topics have been the Ala Kahakai National Historic Trail. That was a really excellent program done in September. And then in October, we got to participate in the Kona High School Centennial Celebration. So those are both up and recorded. And then of course there's last year's. So after our From the Collection series last year, so in 2020, we hosted a really special fundraiser as part of our Giving Tuesday campaign. And during this fundraiser, we were able to raise enough money to completely refurbish our archive research station. This means there's a new computer, a new desk that Kahakaʻio is actually at right now, and all this new material so that you have access to this archive to come and do some research. Anyone is welcome to come research in our archive. You have to book the appointment online. I'm going to show you real quick what that looks like when you come to the, when you come to our website, you'll go to our collections right here. You'll scroll down and learn a little bit about what we have in our collections. And then here you can ask for a research appointment. You do not have to be writing a book. You do not have to be an author. You do not have to be in academia. Anyone can come and research your family history, a topic that interests you, maybe the property you're living on. And we do have our fees listed right there. You'll be greeted by our wonderful archive staff, including Cherish and Julie, who are really excellent and really helpful at what they do. All right, so I'm going to introduce our guest speaker and then I'm going to let him take over. Today we've got Conall Kahakaʻioikamalie Ravenscraft, who will be presenting his personal journey, retracing his family history and ancestral connections after a separation of 2 generations to the area of Nāpōʻopoʻo through our archives collection of historic photographs, research notes, and documentation. Kahakaʻio is a generational descendant of South Kona with family roots in the area of Nāpōʻopoʻo and Keʻei. Kahakaʻio dedicates much of his time to the perpetuation of cultural heritage and history as a heiau practitioner, stewarding the Hale, Keawe and Hikiau sites in Hōnaunau and Kealakekua, and also through his work as a park interpreter at the Puʻuhonua Hōnaunau National Historic Park. So he's got a lot of really interesting things to share with us, his own research that he's been able to do in our archive. So Kahakaʻio, we're ready to turn it on to you. I am going to spotlight your video so everyone can see you real quick.
All right. Thank you so much, Audrey. Yeah, Anō kako. Again, yeah, my name's Kahakaʻio and really excited to be here today, sharing with you folks. Yeah, very much a personal journey. Kawaio Kaha is kind of the title of our event, and Vai is many things. Vai we think of as water, water as a source of life. Ha is the breath, the essence of life, but Vai is also to retain. So Vai, we use this word for retaining information, retaining tradition. So Kawaio Kaha comes from a prayer Elele po'ona kawai o kaha e ku'u aloha. This is a prayer you would say, dedicating your words and your thoughts to a dearly departed. And so, yeah, through these words, through these prayers, and through these practices, I went on a personal journey, yeah, kind of retracing the steps of my family to this area of Nāpōʻopoʻo here in South Kona. And really, it was kind of a, yeah, pulling together family history, things that had been, spoken to me from some of the uncles, traditions that had been passed on, things I've learned talking with other people that live down in the village. And as a cultural practitioner, knowledge that you pick up doing practices. Yeah, I take care of a number of heiau, Hikiau being one of the most important ones, right down there in the village in Kealakekua. Yeah, that is the site where the Kailua Bay State Historical Park is. Yeah, you got the pavilion. So that's Hikiau right there. And then I also take care of some sites down at Hōnaunau. Anyway, as I was growing up, we have this kind of convergence of family tradition, stories, personal research, and this opportunity to come into the collection here at Kona Historical Society kind of led me to delve into, some documents, historical photographs, things that helped me paint a bigger picture of, who our ancestors were, their journeys, their stories, and what their life was like. And so that's what I have prepared for you folks here from the KHS collection. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and hope this all runs smoothly. Okay, so what we see here on the screen, this is the first photograph. This actually was shared with us here from another institution. This is from the Lyman House Memorial Museum, but this is a shot of what the Vahi, the place that is called Nāpōʻopoʻo. So this is, Nāpōʻopoʻo is actually a, I think would be classified as an ili aina, if we want to get technical, and I'm sure that's debatable anyway, but it's an ili aina, so it's a subdivision of a subdivision. Yeah, the ili aina is a smaller land section within the ahupua'a. So most of us from South Kona, from the area, might be familiar with the term Kalama, or the name Kalama, which refers to when you take Nāpōʻopoʻo Road from the intersection down into the village, and you're along that one lane stretch of road with walls and houses on either side, you're driving through the Kalama ahupua'a, and it's actually 5 ahupua'a that have been broken up. Kalama Wai Ava Ava, for example, is one of them. Kalama Kumu being the first one. Anyway, Nāpōʻopoʻo, or Nāpōʻopoʻo, as we say it when we just let the word roll out of our mouths. Nothing wrong with that. You'll hear a lot of the old timers do that, but on paper, Nāpōʻopoʻo. When it just rolls out of the mouth, Nāpōʻopoʻo. Anyway, Nāpōʻopoʻo is a water source. It's a freshwater spring. And if you can see the cursor, the freshwater spring would be coming up right from the shoreline here. Yeah, Nāpōʻopoʻo Hanai Keali'i is the full name of this area. And it sits within the land of Kalama Wai Ula Ula, which is basically this whole area here, and then it extends upland a little distance, but that's debatable. So you'll have to, one of the cool things about this archive is you have access to things like maps, tax records, things that can help you piece information together. So what I'm hoping to do, presenting all of this family history, my own personal research, really what I want to do here is to inspire folks and to kind of let them know that there is a resource to trace together the history of the places you're living. Maybe it's the places your family lived. Maybe you have an ancestor that came from an area. Yeah, if you have little bits of information, you can plug that in down here with the help of our archivists, and yeah, they can help you find, resources that kind of help you paint, paint that picture of what life was like, what your ancestors was doing, what was going on in the place. So everything I have pulled up to share with you today was just from coming into the archive with a simple search term, Nāpōʻopoʻo, and then pulling in what I already know, and kind of substantiating that, seeing, oh, do our stories line up with what is in here? So anyway, this first picture here, yeah, just kind of shows this little stretch of shoreline here that is Nāpōʻopoʻo. Yeah, it's that freshwater spring, the water source that fed these people. And this village down here was a place of chiefs, so that name also reflects what that water was used for. Nāpōʻopoʻo Hānai Ke Alii. Yeah, that water source that nourished the Alii, the chiefs. Yeah, Alii also means little flame, but okay. So I'm gonna jump. One of the coolest things I found in this archive was a set of note cards. These came from Jean Greenwell, I believe. And these note cards are really meant to be kind of an index of information. And so when I came in with my research terms, one of the things I wanted to learn about was, well, what was the population of this area? What were the settlements looking like? And so one of the note cards that really stood out to me were these fascinating ones that take, I'm pointing at it with my hand. I need to use the cursor. Anyway, actual census data that was collected. So Jean Greenwell has this kind of nice catalog on these note cards, and they go all the way back, actually, referencing some of the information that Captain James Cook and Captain James King took when they were here in 1779. And just from these notes, it really kind of paints a cool picture of the area. Yeah, Kailakekua Bay, population estimate, 10,000 people. Yeah, looking at about 300 to 10,000 houses, yeah, between Ka'awaloa and Kealakekua. So we're covering several ahupua'a. Right here, this guy named Ledyard. Ledyard was, oh shucks, was he British or American? I believe he was American, but he was on board the Resolution with Captain Cook. I think he was the only American on that crew. Anyway, Ledyard had some of his own estimates taken. So they're looking at the number of houses. Yeah. Oh, how many people to a house? About 6 people to a house. Yeah. So kind of painting a neat picture. And the cool thing about these note cards is, again, they just put a little bit of information, but you can go back to the writings of, Cook, King, Ledyard. You're looking at their journals, yeah, official publications. So these note cards can also direct you where you can find more information as well. Yeah. So it's kind of an index, a really thorough index. Anyway, yeah, so it goes through the years, and it kind of gives you an idea of what was happening to that population. And you'll notice that 1779, and we're gonna flash forward to, let's see, where are we? 1878, so almost 100 years later, we went from 10,000 people in Kealakekua Bay, yeah, 1779, flash forward, 1878, 99 years later, and now we have 1,700 people. Yeah, so we have a drastic reduction in population. Yeah, so that begs a lot of questions too. What was going on that caused, these populations to shift? I also know that I have ancestors that were living here within this time period. Yeah, so this type of information here can help us point to resources that can help us track down, well, what were our ancestors experiencing? Yeah, what was my great-great-grandfather who lived down there, was born about 1866? Yeah, what was he going through? What was he experiencing? Of course, 1778, he would have been still quite young, but he was one of these 1,761 people living down there. Anyway, don't want to get too hung up on these note cards. We got a lot of cool stuff to check out. Yeah, so the resources here kind of help us paint these pictures. Wow, what was life? What was going on? What were they dealing with? I found some very interesting references to the epidemics that were going on in these areas. Yeah, smallpox, Spanish flu. Yeah, so these are all search terms you can use in the archive as well. Yeah, if you're looking at, okay, what was going on in Kona? What happened with the smallpox, you know? And so these note cards kind of point out, oh yeah, you had epidemics here, certain years, smallpox in Kohala, Kona, Hilo, yeah, 1853. This one was really neat and kind of stood out to me. 1853, I'i Ma with Kamamalu. This is John Papa I'i. John Papa I'i, very important historical figure. He was raised in the court of Kamehameha I. He was the kahu, the personal attendant to Kamehameha II. And he was a heiau practitioner. He observed and practiced traditional rituals. And he wrote down much of his experiences in this book here, which is today is called Fragments of Hawaiian History by John Papa I'i. It's a collection of his writings that have been translated. Anyway, this note here really stood out to me. It's a little bit before my great-great-grandfather's time, actually. He was born 1866. This is a little over 10 years before, but I noticed one thing I know about my great-great-grandfather was he was a carpenter. Yeah, he built Western style buildings. And Papa I'i was here with, this is Victoria Kamamalu. She was to be Kuhina Nui, Prime Minister. And they come to Hawaii, and in Nāpōʻopoʻo, they build a number of houses. It says to segregate the sick. Yeah, so this was providing housing for these sick people to stay, and they were probably suffering from smallpox and you know, whichever epidemics were going around at that time. Anyway, I don't want to get too hung up on these cards, but they really point you in a lot of really cool directions as far as what's going on. So tons of these cards here. Now for my family, this personal journey is really going to focus on, this would be my great-great-grandfather, and his name was Henry Mahi. And, you know, growing up, talking with some of the uncles, you know, learning some of the family stories, talking with people from in the village area, one of the things that I remember from my childhood, and I was kind of young, so I don't really know the full scope of this, but there was kind of a debate on whether my family was actually called Mahi or whether we were something else. It was almost contested whether we lived where we say we came from or not. So the cool thing here is we found a document that kind of substantiates that. This is a tax record from 1888. You can see the cursor up here. And it's in the Okana of South Kona, yeah, on the island of Hawaii. So that puts my great-great-grandfather in that region. And here we found his name. This was his name. This would probably be his tax ID number. Some of this I still have to try and translate. It's all in Hawaiian. It's in Old Hawaiian. But it basically breaks down his properties and what he was paying taxes on. Yeah, Kino, that's the bodies, that's a person. Yeah, so that was his dependents. He had a wife. His wife was his dependent. Ilio, well, he didn't have any dogs. Yeah, in the Kingdom of Hawaii, you paid taxes on your dogs. Yeah, these are his land taxes. So he had property. Yeah, anyway, it kind of basically shows you what he has, what he paid taxes on. A very cool thing about this is there's a note on this tax card. It says, Aya I Kalawao me Kawahine. This says he was living in Kalawao. So Kalawao is a valley on Molokai. It's opposite of Kalaupapa. And our family story tells us that my great-great-grandfather, Henry, because he was a carpenter, he goes to Kalaupapa and Kalawao Valley and he helps build houses for the people in the leper colony. And that's something he ends up basically dedicating his life to. Yeah, he never really returns from that. Both him and his wahine, my great-great-grandmother, they end up staying there. And I believe in our stories, we say that she ended up eventually contracting Hansen's disease. But they stay there and they have several kids. Yeah, and their children get sent back to Kealakekua, back to Nāpōʻopoʻo village, where they're raised by a couple families actually help raise the children down there. Yeah, but just, and having never seen this before, until I got to do this research in the archive, was really cool to pull this up, to see his name right there, see what he was paying taxes on. And there's even a note that shows that he was in fact living somewhere else, but paying taxes for Nāpōʻopoʻo, because that's where he was from. That was his kuleana. Anyway, amazing the kind of resources we can pull up in here. So I'm going to jump out of my note cards, and we're going to continue Henry Mahi's story through looking at some pictures. Yeah. So Henry Mahi, raised in, came from the village, and he moves away. But when they have children, they send the children back, yeah, to live down here in Nāpōʻopoʻo. My great-grandfather, and this is a confusing part, his name was also Henry. My great-grandfather was raised by the Makekau family. Yeah, the Makekau, very famous because that is the family that raised Auntie Iolani Luahine. Yeah, she married Luahine, but she was Makekau. Yeah, so the Makekaus lived down there. This is the old house. This is one of the places my great-grandfather would have, I believe, would have lived. So yeah, just so this this data bank here that shows all our photos, this is what really I found was really cool, because it helped kind of put put a picture to the stories, yeah, to see where they were living and what their life was like, yeah. So this catalog here, you can break it down by search term, and that's what I've done. So I've got kind of an array of images set up here, showing kind of photographs of the Nāpōʻopoʻo area. Yeah, so this one here has a nice aerial view of the bay. Yeah, so this here, if you follow the cursor, this is coming down the flank of Mauna Loa. This is Palipoko o Manuahi. Yeah, the region we call Ka'awaloa, or the Ahupua'a of Ka'awaloa. Yeah, and Palipoko o Manuahi is the cliff face. So the beach we call Nāpōʻopoʻo would be down here, and that beach, the old name is actually Kekua, because as I mentioned earlier, Nāpōʻopoʻo was the watering spring right over here. Yeah, so the name of the village, more contemporary times, has become Nāpōʻopoʻo. And I think that happened when they named the road Nāpōʻopoʻo Road. Yeah, but this is Nāpōʻopoʻo here. Anyway, Kekua is actually the beach we're talking about. And we'll take a look at that in a little bit. But this nice shot here kind of shows the overarching area we're talking about. Kealakekua Bay, a region also called Kapu Kapu. Yeah, that comes from old traditions. If you ever hear the song Ha'ali'ilua, there's a very famous song in South Kona. Ha'ali'ilua has a line, I think in the second or third verse, that references this place. Yeah, they say kapu kapu na maka a'o ka'opua. Yeah, so kapu kapu is that region. Now maka a'o ka'opua is talking about, referencing the clouds which billow and form over this area, which was a very that was a ho'ailona, or a sign that people really wanted to see, because that meant the clouds were going to be bringing rain into the area. Anyway, Kapu Kapu gets its name from an old legend, and connects our region here down to Tahiti as well. There's a place in Tahiti called Tapu Tapu Atea. Yeah, so Kapu Kapu, what we have here is actually, that name was given in reference to this place in Tahiti, showing a very ancient connection. Anyway, got to get back to my grandfather's time. Yeah, so they were raised in this little area. My great-grandfather raised Hanai by the Makekau family and raised there. And he had some siblings, and I believe they were taken in by the Kahawai family. Yeah, so it was kind of cool to kind of connect some of these places. Down here, we have this awesome picture. This is, so you can, over here, we're looking across the bay. We are on the Ka'u side of Kealakekua Bay. This structure here would be where the wharf is located today, the Kealakekua Wharf. This is an area called Kailakekua. There's a ko'a there, fishing grounds. So this building here is the wharf, and back here we would have the old American factors. This was kind of like a warehouse, wholesale warehouse. You would go and you'd buy provisions, food, animal feed, supplies. It was kind of like the Costco back then. Yeah. And then we have Nāpōʻopoʻo, the water spring, kind of right back in this area. Where this gentleman here is walking if you're down here, the Manini Beach Road would be about 15 feet behind him here, coming down. Yeah, so we're right along Manini Beach Road. This is a little area called Waiamau. Auntie Monica Hale talks about this place. I've heard stories about this place as well. This is an area where the old grandmothers would come down here and they would sit in this water at high tide, and they would tap their hands along the water, and they would sing this chant. They would sing these words. Yeah, and these words would call the aumakua. And the aumakua is kind of like a family guardian, a family protector, yeah, an ancestral guardian. And the aumakua would appear to these women in the form of a shark, a mano, and it would swim in from the ocean. It would swim in here, and they would flip it on its back, and they would scrub its belly with stones. They would scratch the barnacles off. They would malama their aumakua, and then send them out along their way. Yeah, when you're down in this area, Waiamau, you'll feel really cold because there's a lot of that fresh water coming up. Yeah, same thing over in the Nāpōʻopoʻo area. Yeah, you've got all this fresh water coming up, so you feel that chill when you're in that water. Yeah, but anyway, so many cool stories that you can kind of plug in when you're going through these pictures, you know, kind of enhancing your memory, enhancing that ancestral recall, the Ike Papalua. Yeah, so really cool places down here. One of our stories, let's see if I can find another cool shot of the area. This is another one. Ooh. There we go. Yeah, so this is another shot of that same Nāpōʻopoʻo area. So this is where the spring would be located. This was probably taken from the wharf somewhere, looking across to the property. At one point, Kahikolu Church was using the property here. I think Cromwell had a house here at some point. Anyway, people live there now too. So it's always had residents living there. Yeah. So this is kind of another cool shot of the Nāpōʻopoʻo area here, looking in on Kalama Wai Ula Ula. And let's see, I want to see what life was like down there. Yeah. So this is what we used in our poster. This is a shot of folks doing Hukilao. One of my dear friends, his family is the Kihei family. And they were the family that were kind of in charge of the Hukilao down in that area. So I'm sure this is some of his relatives here. When is this picture from? The cool thing about this database is it's got a lot of cool information. Don't quite have a date for when the picture was taken. Anyway, we can assume this is early 1900s. Yeah, so these are folks pulling their nets in, doing surround catch. Yeah, and he would tell us that they would basically surround almost the whole bay, stretching their long nets out and pulling it in, doing Hukilao. So we are now on the Kekua village side area where we call Nāpōʻopoʻo Beach. And as you can see from some of these historic shots, the beach has changed quite a bit from what you'll see today. Let's see if I can pull up another angle. I think this is a good one here. Yeah. So today, you'll know this area because where the water break is here, the beach kind of slopes upward and it's covered in boulders. Yeah. So that occurred, some of you probably remember all this, that occurred between hurricanes Eva and Iniki. To be honest, that was a little before my time. Yeah, but the hurricanes came in, kind of reshaped the beach and pushed all those boulders up, which is why today you go down there, it's like a big rocky beach. Yeah. So the cool thing about this is we can kind of dig in, getting these historic photographs and getting a look at, yeah, what did the whole place look like before? What was the village like for our kupuna, for our grandparents? And what were they seeing? Oh boy, yeah, a lot of cool shots of life down here. This is, yeah, same thing on Kekua side. I think we have Hikiau, heiau is probably off in the background here. I wonder if some of these trees are still standing. This looks like this could be the oh, no date on this one either, shucks. This looks like it could be the 1950s or 60s. just judging from their clothing. Yeah, but we have Hikau in the background there. And so we can see that these places were being used over time. Yeah, so life continues. And we have some interesting snapshots of life down here. Yeah, this is a Greenwell. This is Maud Greenwell. And she's holding a barracuda. Oh, look at that. Yeah, so kind of neat stuff. We can kind of check out, see what was going on here. Yeah, looks like a fishing boat came in, sitting right on the beach there. This is Kekua again, because we can see the cliff face of Polipoko in the background there. Yeah, the old McFarlane house would have been just off the picture, probably behind them. Yeah. And let's see, who else do we want to look at? This is kind of a picture that I found really fascinating. This is from the 1920s, I want to say. 1929, okay. And this is showing an area of the wharf. This looks like Amfactors back there. And this is a crowd gathering doing a canoe race. Yeah, so if you remember looking at what was going on with the population, yeah, 10,000 people in Cook's time, 100 years later, down to just a couple thousand. Yeah, but that didn't stop the people from enjoying life. Yeah, clearly, because we're down here. This is the wharf here. There's, you can kind of zoom in close on this one. There's some really cool high resolution pictures in here. Zoom in kind of close. There's some sort of wooden structure built up here at the edge of the wharf. Whole crowds gathering. And this photo was clearly taken from a boat. Which is another cool thing about going through these digital collection of photos, because you gotta remember, back in the, today we all have like phones on our cameras. We can just pull up a phone in an instant and take a picture. This is an amazing photo, and it, someone had to lug their equipment. It's on a boat because it's taken from the ocean. So snapshots like this really were kind of difficult to acquire too. But someone saw the importance of bringing their camera along and documenting. And anyway, it's really cool that we have this resource right at our fingertips, that we can go through the years and get these snapshots of what was going on. I just like looking at the topography and the architecture, seeing, oh, what was down there? Yeah. Anyway, let's go back out of there. Oh, let's look at just a couple more before I close up for questions. One more shot here of the landing, and we can see a steamer offshore there. Yeah. Okay, so the steamer is kind of cool because this is how people traveled around back in that time, in my great-grandfather's time. Yeah. So when he went to Kalawao, it wasn't on an airplane, it wasn't on a canoe, it was on these steam vessels. And one of the things that happened down here in Nāpōʻopoʻo village, and this might be how he got involved with going to Kalaupapa and taking care of the people with Hansen's disease in the first place, is that if you guys remember where Hikiau heiau is located, right in the backside of Hikiau, there was a picture of it on here, but anyway, some photos on here have restricted use. So that's why you got to make friends with your archivist, because they'll tell you how you can use these different documents as well. But one of them showed this site right behind Hikiau where there was a little penal house located. And this is where they would basically house anyone with Hansen's disease. You would kind of be arrested actually at the time. They would arrest you, throw you in this house, and then you would get loaded on the steamer. And yeah, in kind of a cruel fashion, you were just taken to Kalaupapa and like thrown off the boat. So I think my great-grandfather had a little bit of compassion for that. And that's probably one of the reasons he went there, to build houses and to, create a place where these people could live. Anyway, this snapshot kind of shows, again, what it was like in that area, what was going on, how were they traveling around, how were they dressing, what were their houses looking like. Yeah. And so you can really kind of see, yeah, just a nice shot of what things were like. Yeah. Okay, do we want to do one more? This one here is gonna show, yeah, this is the rubble of Hikiau heiau. So now Hikiau has kind of been restored. I think that was Uncle Mauna Roy. Yeah, so he's restored the face of it, put in a stairway. There's a monument as well, dedicated to Henry Opukahaia. Monument kind of commemorates several things, but you can see that even our archaeological sites have undergone restoration and change in that area too. Yeah. So these snapshots that we pull out of the archive, they really, yeah, pull things together, pull all your family stories together. What was going on? Yeah, it kind of shows you a lot of neat stuff. Okay, last one. This is Wai Loko Alii, another very important water source. Yeah, this is when you're right behind Hikiau at the beach area and you go in back, you have this big pond source. This was a place where the kahuna would come. And the kahuna were your priests, and they used this pond for cleansing and doing water rituals. Because again, water was very important as a source of life, but also, again, vai means to retain. Yeah, and part of what kahuna do is they keep traditions and they translate them over the generations. Yeah, and my family has connections. We're descendants of some of these kahuna. Yeah, so this concept of the vai, the water, trickling down generation after generation through the water sources that sustained our families, through the places that sustained them. To me, this, yeah, that concept of the vai kind of ties it all together, you know, connects us, you know, between the generations. So Wai Loko Alii is still standing, still sitting back there. It's a little overgrown, and I know this picture is kind of blurry, hard to tell. But again, these places are so sacred because of the information that the places hold themselves. Yeah, so what we have here in our digital collection is a really cool way for those of us that don't have our feet on the ground, you know, because I can walk down to this place, you know, and visit it and have an intimate connection with it. But for those of us that are, you know, we can't physically go there, there are resources for you to connect to these places as well. And that's what I'm really hoping to inspire. I know it sounded like I just kind of rambled a whole bunch for the last, you know, half hour or so, but really that's what I'm hoping to impress on you folks through this collection, is that there is a tremendous resource. There is vai in the collection. This collection is that vai okaha. It is a source of life and information and tradition. And yeah, make your appointments and visit the lovely people down here, because really, it's a special thing we have. Anyway, sorry, I hate to ramble too much more. So I'll see if anyone has any questions. Audrey.
Thank you so much, Kahakaʻio. That was lovely. I did not feel like it was rambling at all. Every story you took us through was lovely to hear. We have a couple of questions. I'm not sure if you'll know anything about these or not, but we can give them a shot.
Yeah.
So Sam asked, what do we know about the history of commerce at the wharf? I've been told the Leslie family ran an import-export business there, cattle, building supplies. There's a second question. Do you know anything about export at the wharf?
Let's see. Export, commerce, getting into specifics. Those are excellent topics to plug in here at the archive. Because I've seen records, you know, receipts, things like that. So I can't, you know, give you direct information about that right now, but I know that there are sources down here. What I do know off the top of my head is, yes, commerce was very important in Kealakekua Bay. There was cattle being brought in. I want to say some of the earliest cattle might have been coming into this area.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I believe
we have some cool
so.
photos of that, of the cattle being lifted onto the ships and things like that.
Yeah, I didn't include them too much in, you know, what I have on the background here, because my family didn't really do a lot with cattle. But I've seen, yeah, there's like hundreds of pictures of, in fact, this might be, since my screen is still up, we've got some cowboys, and What are they doing? Oh, they're delivering lumber at this point. So there you go, with American factors being down there. They were bringing a lot of things in. There's a lot of pictures like this with them floating lumber onto the beach and into the wharf. So there was definitely a lot going on. A lot of the restricted photos had some really cool shots of the actual village area, American factors itself. Cool stuff to come peek at. Just make sure you make your appointment.
Yeah, and a note about the restricted items. Those are just, sometimes they can be used for personal use and things like that. This is a public program, so we were, trying to keep just the ones we were allowed to show in a public format. But when we say restricted, it's not anything crazy. It just, depending on the donor, whoever donated it or loaned it might sometimes have, different qualifiers for when it's used. So Sam had a follow-up question as well. They said, is it fair to say that there was a sacred period until mid-19th century and then a commercial period after? That's an interesting question, right? Because it's, the sacredness of a place is there, but is it always maintained, maybe?
Sure. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. That does happen. The term, a good term we use in Hawaii is vahipana. There's vahipana and there's vahikapu. Yeah, so kapu is like sacred in that very strict sense of like it's sacred and it's severe. And if it's kapu, you're gonna act a certain way, and you're gonna behave a certain way, because if not, you may get eliminated. Vahipana is kind of I think it's a little more of a contemporary term we use, but it illustrates that sense of pana. Vahi means place. I should say that first. Yeah, Vahi is place. Pana means pulsing. Means it has a pulse, it has a rhythm. Yeah, it has a heartbeat. Yeah, a place with a heartbeat. And it's the people that give that pulse to the place. So what their lifestyle is, what they're doing. So if we're looking, historically, or in the kind of the historic period, the Aikapu, Kealakekua Bay it was called Kapu Kapu. That was one of the names. Yeah. Sacred, on a profound level. Yeah. And you have so many heiau just in that area. Hikiau, Hale Kalani, Kapahu Kapu, where what we call Manini Beach, was a women's heiau down there. In fact, if I go, I think there's a book in here, really good book. John Stokes was an archaeologist, and he surveyed hundreds of heiau on the island of Hawaii. And if I recall, just between Ka'avaloa and Hōnaunau, which is like a 4-mile stretch of land, there's probably a good dozen heiau right in that area. So yeah, very much a sacred area. And then, we do see a period of time, like a lot of these photos coming out of the 1920s, where the guys they got cattle right there, penned on the side of Hikiau heiau. My cousin who lives down in the village, my cousin Shane, when he learned how to drive, he drove his Jeep over Hikiau heiau. That was, and that was how you got to the beach. You would walk over it because it was just a pile of rubble. It hadn't been restored. So yeah, places go through, phases, changes, and they also go, things go in cycles. So they also come back. So I think the sacredness of the place is something that people, are bringing back there as well, especially since the site has been restored. I personally have conducted, ceremonial practices down in the area, used Hikiau for its, original purposes, for doing traditional astrology and looking at star alignments. Anyway, places change, but they go through cycles, and it's all tied into the people. The people are the pulse.
Yeah. Okay, we have a couple of other questions. Gerard was wondering how you access the digital collection. The site that Kahakaʻio is on right now is only accessible when you come into research. So that's our online collections. That's not like available online. You have to come into our collections to see it. but we do have a number of sources that are available just on our website. So I'm going to post the link in there if anyone wants to see what we do have. You can see it on our digital resources page and poke around there. We're continually writing grants to upload more things that can be accessed digitally. So, you know, that's always in the works, but what we do have available is there. And then we also have, I wanted to acknowledge Patty, who is in Chico, California. She says she has a certificate of death indicating her second great grandmother was born in Nāpōʻopoʻo in 1853. Patty, do you know the name, maybe the family name? It'd be interesting to know if we know anything or if they came up today in today's program. And then Hale was wondering if you could name Kahakaʻio the names of the 5 ahupua'a mentioned earlier on the road that runs on towards the bay.
Okay, yeah. So we're talking about the Kalamas. There's 5 Kalama.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I don't think I have all of them. Kalama Kumu would be the first. Kalama Wai Ava Ava, I believe, is the last one. So that's Kalama 1 and Kalama 5. And then my family, where Nāpōʻopoʻo proper is, that was Kalama Wai Ula Ula. There are 2 others, and I'm so sorry. The names have jumped out of my head at the moment. But there's a lot of good documentation on Hawaiian place names. Particularly if you you know, can make an appointment at the archive, you can look up tax map keys, and a lot of the old tax map keys will be based on ahupua'a and ili'aina, and they'll kind of, yeah, they're going to go off of those old place names. Generally, they kind of group all 5 Kalamas as one, and so people will just like a place name search term for it is just Kalama. Because they'll group all 5 as one. But yeah, when you break up the 5, it's yeah, Kalama Kumu is one of them, Kalama Wai Ula Ula, and Kalama Wai Ava Ava. And there are 2 others, and again, I'm so sorry, those jumped out of my head. I think you might be muted, Audrey. I see you talking.
Oh, so sorry, so sorry. I was typing some answers to some folks because we've got some lots of questions.
Yeah.
Okay, Lahela's inspired to do more research on Ohana names. That's awesome. That's what we're hoping. I wanted to mention too, a lot of the process that Kahakaʻio is explaining and how he, you know, related to the archive, we had the chance to do over the summer with our Mālama Aina program. We're going to do it again this summer. So if you've got middle school age students, this is a program that we're doing every summer where students come in and they get to do what Kahakaʻio has done. They get to research their families. They learn their ahupua'a. If they're not from here, they learn about the land they live on, the families who live there, the resources that were used. They identify their vai. So, you know, this is really at the heart of the mission of Kona Historical. This is your archive. This is the community's archive, and we want it to be used like that. So it's really great to see some of you so excited to do some research, to continue some research. Let's see, someone's asking for books or articles you'd recommend to learn about some of this. So I don't know if you have any specifically about, probably not too many about specifically Nāpōʻopoʻo, but maybe in general.
Yeah, kind of some general ones. Well, one of the ones that was in Gene Greenwell's note cards is from John Papa'i'i. If you're thinking kind of that 1700s, 1800s time period, which is kind of where a lot of us like to dig for historical information. John Papa'i'i has most of his writing has been translated, and it's compiled in a book called Fragments of Hawaiian History by John Papa'i'i. And he was an ali'i, he was a kahuna, he was a caretaker for Kamehameha II. He observed a lot of aspects of our culture, you know, firsthand, and he writes these down. Another cool one I always tell people about, very difficult to get. And so I'm hoping to utilize this archive and see if I can find any of it in here. But there's this writer from Nāpōʻopoʻo village for Hawaiian practitioners and people who study genealogy, especially. This guy is really important. His name is Kailua Kamakau. He's a Kamakau, but he's not a relative of Sam Kamakau. Samuel Kamakau is the famous writer. He's from Oahu. Kailua Kamakau is of Nāpōʻopoʻo. And just like John Papaʻiʻi, he was a kahuna. He practiced a lot of our traditions. And when he converted to Christianity, he learned how to read and write. And he was a fantastic individual. He could speak, oh my gosh, a ridiculous number of languages. You know, Hawaiian, of course, but also English, French, Dutch, German, Spanish, probably Cantonese, because this is the early 1800s. He could also converse in like Ilocano and a couple of dialects from the Philippines. He traveled, he lived in Hawaii. Yeah, fantastic guy. And he publishes his own newspaper called Kaho'omana Kahiko, which ran for several decades. And he collects a lot of stories, mo'olelo, but a lot of it having to do with genealogies, place names, and cultural practices and historical uses of these places that he grew up in. So that's Kailua Kamakau, but it's very difficult to find his research and his writing, unfortunately. Anyway, yeah, John Papaʻiʻi, I mentioned, Kailua. Yeah, any other good book sources? Fornander, Abraham Fornander. That's another one where you're getting translations of his writing. He has about 6 volumes out there, I think called Fornander's History of the Hawaiian People. Anyway, there's 6 volumes. He wrote a lot. Stories, place names, genealogies, that kind of stuff too. Excellent resource there. Yeah. Oh, and Monica Hale. Monica Hale is from the village, and she passed away, you know, recent modern times, you know, a couple decades ago now. I think a relative helped compile all of her stories and her notes that she had made throughout her life. The book was published posthumously, but it is called, is it Clouds of Memories? I think it's Clouds of Memories by Monica Hale. And so she talks about a lot of, you know, Nāpōʻopoʻo specifically, because that's where she was from. Yeah.
We're getting to as many questions as we can. Lots of interest. This is wonderful.
That is great. That was the hope. That was the goal.
Yeah, and if you guys have more specific questions, I think a lot of people wondering about their own research, you can always reach out to me at Audrey at Kona Historical. I'll put you in the right contacts. We also have all of our, we have some inquiry forms you can fill out on our website that will go directly to our collections team, and one of them can help you. Okay. So before we wrap up, I did want to just talk about a few more things. If we didn't get to your question, we will try to email you after. If everyone could stay on too, we do have a survey that really helps us with funding if we get some feedback. So stay on till the end if you can to get that survey. But I wanted to show everybody something. So we do these programs for free. We're really happy to do that. But we do launch occasional fundraisers that are kind of related to from the collections. And so I wanted to show everybody the one we're going to be launching as kind of part of this program, today's program. Okay, so I'm going to end your screen sharing, Kahakaʻio, and show my screen. We're going to be launching these Ahupua'a t-shirts pretty soon. They're going to be up in the next few weeks. So these will be online for order, and they list the North and South Kona Ahupua'a on there. There's also a little blurb on the front to hopefully spark some conversation about the community. Like I said, we really love to help people identify where they're from and what that means to be from there. So these are going to be available soon. If you stay till the end of the survey, there's a spot for you to put in your email address so we can let you know when they launch. We also have membership options here at Kona Historical, and I've put that link in the chat. So as a member, you get a discount on visiting the archive. So definitely check that out. if you're interested in coming in. Lots of questions about our online collection. So we have some that are online. We have right now, I think we're getting our tax records all up there for online access all the time. So check us out online. I've included those links as well in the chat. So, okay, thank you everyone. I'm seeing lots of thank yous coming in. Kahakaʻio, you've really inspired quite a lot of people here. So thank you everyone so much for joining with us. We're so happy to have these conversations. It's so fun. Every time somebody comes into the archive, we walk out with news stories. We're open every Friday for the archive, and we've had some people recently who have come in, and it has just been so much fun to see what they find. Okay, and I'm going to put my email in the chat right here, actually, before we sign off. So anyone who didn't have their question answered or had additional questions, you can follow up with me. Okay, so there's my email. You guys can reach out to me. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kahakaʻio. We went a little over time, but I think it was well worth it. What do you think?
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, I'm really stoked to see everyone excited to check stuff out and do some research on their own, and and really understand it. I love what you said about just adding that context to the things we already know. A lot of us know our family stories, but adding context to the photographs or seeing their names written in tax records really validates it, and also just helps us picture it and cement it in our minds for generations to come. And that is so important because it really starts with us sharing our own stories. That way everyone else can do the research and can learn the stories 100 years from now. So it's very clear you've done that in your practice. So we appreciate it. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Big mahalo to Kahakaʻio and the collections team who really did a lot of the work to make this happen. So we appreciate you guys. We'll see you next season for From the Collections, but the Historical Society is doing plenty of other programs. So follow us on social media and you'll see what we're up to next. All right, bye.
Aloha.
Aloha.